Well, welcome everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started a little early since the last session is wrapped up, and I was jumping in saying, let me go" with some of those great questions in that previous session. And as several people said in the comments, I'm really excited and encouraged at the way that conversation went and the approach that everyone is taking to the very large question of Magento open source. But what we are here to do now is very briefly talk through the closing of the event, but then I'm going to talk about a few focus areas and then saving as much as time as possible for your questions. So please, if you have questions about the Magento Association, some of the things that were coming up in that last session, open source, anything like that you'd like me to answer, start loading them up in the Q&A section of Hopin and start looking at those and upvoting the questions you want to see answered. So we're going to talk very briefly about some of the things the board has been doing, especially some of the things we've been getting the most questions about, and then we will go to that Q&A time. So I did want to give an update on the board itself. We currently have 6 members, myself, Slava, who is our vice chair, Danny, who serves as our treasurer, Andrew and Sonia, who serve as directors, and then Eric is our Adobe liaison. There have been some departures from the board, career changes, as well as just life changes. It is a rather large time investment to serve on the board, and so we've had some people come and go. And I just want to thank everyone that has given their time to the association, both in the past and currently. And then we're actually going to talk some about how we are growing the board. So with that, our focus areas, very first thing that I want to discuss is elections. We have several open seats right now. And so we would like to, or will be holding a process to fill 3 of those seats. That means we will add 3 individuals to the current composition of the board. Our bylaws specify a slate process, and I'm going to have an article and other details that are going to be live in the next few weeks about this. But our bylaws specify a slate process. Long story short, that means that people apply to be on the board, and there's a committee that puts together a group that is then appointed to the board. The membership votes on that, but the membership vote is to either accept the entire slate or reject the entire slate. It's not to elect a specific individual person. There's a lot of reasons why that's how associations generally work, but with everything going on and just wanting to have more direct community representation, what we're going to do is we're going to use that slate process for 2 of these 3 seats, and then we're going to have 1 seat that will be elected directly from the community. I am guessing, I can't see the Q&A right now, but someone's probably loading up a question about how that works with our current bylaws. We do have a process that meets the requirements of our current bylaws to do this, but that's a lot of boring legal minutia that I will break out into my blog article. And again, the process for how this is going to work will be announced no later than December 1st, because we do want to get this moving and get new people on the board as soon as possible. Next up, I think we've talked a lot about the open source task force today, but just to kind of repeat that, they are up and running. They had their kickoff call on October 15th. And then as I mentioned this morning, Adobe is taking part in that task force, but they are not driving the decisions of that task force. I'm hoping that the conversations continue to have that spirit and tone that I just heard in the previous session, where we really are working together to find the best solution. But I know there were some people concerned of, hey, is Adobe actually making the decisions for the task force of the association? And they're not. And they are coming alongside us, and they're assisting in those discussions and providing their viewpoint. But at the end of the day, the task force is made up of a wide number of members from the community, and they are the ones that will be making the final recommendation. So on the financial side of things, we did just complete our independent audit. Every year going forward, we have an independent auditor right now. We're contracted with an auditing firm called Selden Fox. They have no connection to the board, to any members of the board. Orta Smith Buckland. They are a separate independent company, and they came in and took a very deep look at our records, our finances, everything for both 2019 and 2020. That process just wrapped up. We approved that audit in our last board meeting, and Danny's going to be posting a blog article detailing the process and giving you a snapshot of the association's financials. I dropped this in the chat in the last session, but I will say that right now we are funded by sponsors, and our goal that so far I believe we have been able to meet is that no individual sponsor is a majority of our revenue, because, again, kind of legal minutia, but there's some different things in the laws and the tax statuses around nonprofits where even if it wasn't a goal of the board, and it is, to be financially independent, but even from a nonprofit status, we want to make sure that it's very clear that we're not just a division of a company that's providing all of our revenue. So more details coming soon there on the blog. I'm also very excited. We've been working most of the year on a podcast. And so we're launching a podcast called Proceed to Checkout in November. And it's going to tell some interesting stories from different merchants. And I am excited to listen in. All right, so we're about to jump into the Q&A, but before we do, a couple of quick reminders. Please join the association. The members that we have now and that are joining now, y'all will be the ones voting on that community elected seat that's going to be joining the board. So please go to magentoassociation.org/join and join. Check out our Commerce Co-op Content Hub, and then follow us on Twitter at Magento Association. And the social media team wants me to remind y'all to find us on all the socials. And if you've been tweeting today, or if you're tweeting after the event about some of the things we're talking about, use hashtag MAConnect. So now Sonia is going to join us on stage to help me with the Q&A process. As she does that, I just want to remind you, click over into the session section to Q&A, enter your question there. You can be anonymous or not. And then also you can upvote the questions there. And with that, I am going to end my screen share and we can dive into some questions.
Okay, I'm just about to clear up the questions here a bit because we still have some of those listed here that were actually meant for Chris. So I just want to clean them up so we have some more overview of questions. And now I think it looks better. Okay, I'm going to sort them by popular. So bring in your votes. If you are watching us on the stage, go to stage Q&A on the right-hand side in your panel and put in your questions, upvote the others. And I'll start with the one from Talish. The Magento Association historically has struggled keeping board members on. Currently, there are more ex-board members than current board members. What are your strategies to change this pattern?
Very good question, Talish. A couple of things. One, in the process to apply to take on these new board seats, we're going to be very clear about the time involvement and commitment. So that people understand kind of what they're getting into. And then also, I think a lot of it has been just the uncertainty over the past year. We've seen a lot of people changing jobs, and I think that's had a big impact. But then even just bringing more people on the board, I feel like is going to help, because right now we ask a lot of our directors. We try, every committee has a board liaison, for instance, and the goal is that no board members having to serve on multiple committees. But if you've been involved in our committees, or if you have noticed that Sonia's name has been on almost everything today, you might see that we have directors that are being pulled in a lot of different directions. And so I think that working to improve that will help with retaining board members.
Yeah, I think that's actually, if we have more board members to distribute the workload, then that should help to keep them on board. And I'm happy to share some board liaison roles in the committees, because it's, we do need to have space open in our minds to actually make that work. Okay, next question from Eric. Why not allow the community to bring forth all candidates to be voted on for all seats about the board elections?
So we, well, I feel very strongly that diversity and inclusion and representing the entire community is incredibly important. And so I have seen where at large elections that are just open to a community become popularity contests, and we are seeking to have the right representation of the ecosystem on the board. And so that's kind of the driving force for me. At the board level, as we discussed it, part of it is realizing that there's a reason that a majority of associations and nonprofits do it this way. We want to make sure we're following those best practices. I also think that the process that we're finalizing now, the community still has involvement and input. Like, it's not, there are no surprises, there are no hidden agendas. Like, the community can still be involved in it, but this way there is some design behind. Like, for instance, what we had to do with the open source task force, where we got to the end of the process and we realized, hey, there's almost no representation from tech vendors, extension authors, that sort of thing. So someone had to look at that and make kind of that manual decision of, we need to pull in someone to meet this unmet need. So that's where I think the balancing having the slate process with the community elections will give us the best possible results.
Can you maybe also share already how the candidates for the slate process are probably going to be selected?
Probably going to be. I have not looked at the latest comments on the near final draft of the process, so I don't want to, hopefully I don't offend anyone if we've decided this isn't the way to do it. But I will say that the current working idea is to follow something very close to what's in our bylaws now of having an elections committee. And we want to be very intentional about who is on that elections committee. Specifically, we want it to be community members and community members that are not interested in serving on the board, so that it's an independent group. So we do, and then they'll take input from the D&I committee, but it'll still be in the end of the day, it's still a community-driven process.
Okay, and then the next question is from Willem. What does the Magento brand licensing exactly entail? Is there a set end date for the licensing? And are you allowed to first sell Magento products and second own a distribution named Magento Lite, for example? The swag store.
So I am actually pulling up the legal agreement right now, because those are some very good, very specific terms. So the license agreement is for a term of 3 years, and it automatically renews for successive 1-year periods unless there's 90 days notice to terminate. It was signed in 2020, so that means it is good through 2023. As far as what exactly it entails, it is primarily focused around the Magento Association and Meet Magento names. There's not actually there is a specific call out to being able to use Magento and what they call the M Cube design. We are licensed to use that. I am not a lawyer. I am not going to try to say if this agreement means we could have a distribution name that, for instance, but I would say that things are at least looking good for the swag store, and any further details on that, we'd probably ask our attorney to weigh in on.
Okay, and directly connected to this is then Manny's question. What about opening up a swag store for the Magento Association website to generate our own revenue?
You know, I really like that idea. It's one of those things where I want to make sure that we don't spend $20,000 on a swag store that then generates $10,000. Like, that's what we always have to weigh with some of these ideas. But I think overall, I want to talk with our staff and figure out what would that look like, and can we do that? Because I think that would be it may not generate a majority of our revenue, but I just think it's cool. I like the idea.
Then we had the question already earlier today about the membership fees are waived. Is there a current estimate price point for future membership fees?
There's not a specific price point. We have discussed and debated a lot of things at the board level and at the membership committee level. One thing that we have discussed is we're a diverse global community. So what we charge in the US may not be what we charge in other countries, and vice versa, and maybe even tying it to a purchasing power index or something similar. That starts getting really complicated, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't pushed forward on a paid membership model yet, because the questions to answer and the complexity behind it may actually eclipse the revenue that it could generate at first, at least with our current size membership. In my head, and kind of along those lines, in my head, when I think about it, I've kind of just spitballed and said, what if it was $100 a year? And so, and that's one of the reasons I do that, is I look at that and I say, okay, if it's $100 a year and we have 2,000 members, how much is that revenue does that generate? How does that compare to what our sponsors pay? That sort of thing. But that's not to say that it would necessarily be 100 a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then the next question here is, when people show interest in volunteering with a board, a committee, task force, or marketing initiative, but aren't selected, is there any attempt to involve those people in other initiatives?
That is an area where, at least the parts that I know of, we could do a better job. I think that if, like, I've been in conversations where if you're someone that's applied for something, wasn't selected, and then you apply for something else, and we notice or remember that you were someone that wasn't selected, like, we will say, hey, this is someone that's very, very clearly wants to help out. Let's find a way to get them involved. But right now, as far as I know, it's not an organized effort. And that's definitely something we could do better on.
Okay, now we have 3 with one vote so far. So take the newest one from Moses. Can the license agreement with Adobe be shared? And if not, what defines what stays private with MA versus shared publicly?
I don't think there would be any problem sharing this agreement. As I look through it, it's not something that's marked as confidential or anything like that. So I think we could share that. I just want to double check again, kind of run that by legal. But as far as what decides what is and isn't shared, there's not unless it is marked confidential. Thus far, it's primarily just been when the board sees something and we realize, hey, this is something we need to share with the community, then we have more recently started making a point of, how do we get this on our website? How do we share it? But it's a conversation that the board has more than anything else. And part of it is we've kind of assumed that there's a lot of really boring paperwork we deal with. And there was an assumption that, why would the community want to see any of this? And maybe that's an assumption we need to revisit. But yeah.
That's actually just getting a lot of upvotes. A question from Talish here. How can the Magento Association members get a hold of these boring legal minutiae that are not confidential?
Well, originally the plan was, and get ready to cry a little bit, I'm still mourning the loss of in-person events in Magento Imagine. Originally, kind of the vision was, hey, at each year at Imagine, either just before or just after Imagine, we would have a membership meeting, and all the members that wanted to would get together in person, and we would have one really cool event together. And that would also be an opportunity where we bring all the files, we bring all the records. Somebody wants to sit down and look at something, they can. That doesn't work that way now, because everything has changed about not just events, but even Imagine and things like that. So right now, I guess you'd have to ask us. I will say that, and this is if things go down a very adversarial path, but our association does employ an association management company called Smith Buckland. They do have an office in Chicago. you actually could make an appointment to go into that office and to review the files and records as a member. We don't want y'all to have to do it that way. And again, that's kind of an adversarial way to do it. But yeah, it's a good question, and we'll take that under advisement and figure out the best way to do that. I've kind of viewed maybe on our website, once you log in as a member, we could just have a file portal or something like that, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, there are some comments now that boring as that might be, it would be very helpful to share it, and that there is a hope that it will increase engagement with from the community, like the early Magento days. Yeah, and Telish commenting that reading legal files on events is probably not what people will do, but he would like them as bedtime reading material. Yeah, and Eric chiming in, there is no such thing as too much transparency. And Navar actually agrees that the idea of sharing that on the website would be the way to go. Now we have 2 questions around license. So Vinay asked, I've heard before the Magento license agreement is constructed in a way Adobe can pull the licensing whenever they would like. Is that true?
Again, not a lawyer, but in reading it, Adobe does have the right to terminate the agreement with cause. Basically, if we violate the agreement with 30 days notice, if they determine that we are using the names in a way that is not in compliance with the agreement. So if we start doing things that they could sue us over, basically. And the only other terms that it could terminate under is if, let's see, if the association goes bankrupt, if the association is taken over by creditors. Yeah, that's really it. So basically no, unless they want to send us a legal threat and say we're violating the license agreement in some way. And the way the license agreement is worded, again, not a lawyer, but I think it would be relatively hard for them to make that claim the way we operate. So.
Checking for any comments on that. Vinay, thanks for clarifying. So, and we have another question here. I'm very sure to mispronounce this name. I'm sorry. Mashiet Kalkovsky is the last name, so that's easier for me to pronounce. Actually, 3 questions, but they all tie into the licensing. First, can Adobe withdraw the license before 3 years? I think there was no answer to this. Yes. And if so, under what circumstances? That was if we violate the regulations of the license. And what is the scope of the license? And I think you mentioned that earlier with the MBUG design.
Yeah, it's specifically the Magento name, the M Cube design, the Meet Magento. And actually, when I say Magento name, it is the full trademark that's been filed on Magento and the full trademark for Meet Magento. And then it also covers the domain names magentoassociation.org and meetmagento.com. As far as any other scope, it basically says we can't then modify them. We can't change them. We have to use them as is, that type of thing. But that's really it. And then before we dive into anything else, I do want to say kind of the comments you referred to earlier about more transparency is a good thing. I was really inspired by Chris. I wish I had a slide that said mea culpa. I think that was really brave of Chris, kind of what you shared earlier today. And I kind of have my own mea culpa of, I think there's this story that people have told themselves that the association's up to no good or Adobe's up to no good because there's not enough communication and transparency from the association. And that was not an organized effort by anyone to not be transparent or to hide anything or to control something. That was a lack of focus by myself as chair to drive the board towards transparency, and a lack of follow through on my part of continuing those blog articles that I had started before. And so what I've actually done is I now my Tuesday afternoons are Magento Association afternoons now, and every afternoon I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write some sort of update for the community. I'm trying to rope some of our other directors into that and some of our committee members into that, so it's not just me you're hearing from, but I want to make sure that as a board we have a policy that as often as possible, and definitely much more frequently than we have been, we're getting very transparent updates out to the community so that y'all know what's going on, what we're doing. And kind of along those lines, some of the questions earlier in that last session, I heard, questions around, well, wait, does Adobe control the association? Did Adobe control the association? Will Adobe control the association in the future? They don't control the association. Basically, what Adobe does control is the amount of help and involvement and advice that they're providing to us. Basically, the amount of time their employees are spending with us. And we have had times where, for various factors, and I don't want to put all of this on the association or all of this on Adobe, but we've had times where we just weren't getting very much attention at all from Adobe. And we are definitely getting more attention now, but I would consider that attention and not control. So I personally run our board meetings, and the directors, we have Eric on the board, who is an Adobe representative, but all the rest of us are not Adobe reps, and we do things by vote, by majority vote. So it is an independent association. It's going to remain an independent association. What's changing is as Adobe begins to engage more with the community again, they're engaging more with us, and that is very, very welcome. And that's been very helpful.
I'm not sure if you've seen this comment from Talish in the chat that he steals the term from Maya, saying that the association needs a chief hype officer whose main role is just to make sure that everything we do is actually transparent, communicated to our membership, and to get rid of this feel of disconnection between the association and its members, and to bring back some excitement that I think we could really use. And there are some people agreeing with this, so I think that is indeed
all right. So Talash,
something we could use.
I got the cape for you. Just whenever you want to put this on, and if you want to be our chief hype officer, that sounds great to me. So
I can send a second cape, but it's in the office currently still. So yeah. Now going back to questions, I would say. So Diego asked, does the association have the authority to make any technical decisions about the OS product? For example, deprecating Elasticsearch dependency or merge a new theme from the community into open source core?
So we do not have the authority to make a decision like that, but one thing I've talked with Eric and others at Adobe about recently is, as we get in better sync between Magento Association and Adobe, I do think that if there are changes coming out that could potentially be disruptive, the association could help communicate about those changes, help educate our members about those changes, and then even take information back to Adobe and say, hey, from what we're seeing and hearing, there may be some unintended side effects of this you're not aware of. I look at, and I'm reminded that this is an association that's been around for about 20 years, but there's a group called ASUG that is the user group in North America for SAP. And they are the nonprofit trade association for SAP. And they are involved in the roadmap conversations around SAP. So when SAP is setting their product roadmap, they're bringing in key members of ASO to do that. They're even involved in helping sell SAP now. And so there's always that line of, how we want to stay independent, but we want to be closely involved. And so I think as the association grows, who knows, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we could definitely have a more direct level of involvement like that. But for the time being, those are decisions that Adobe makes. And quite frankly, I'm a little glad because I already get enough questions about the decisions that the board makes. So.
Yeah. Probably demonstrating that we do need to make it more transparent of what's happening inside. And as Brent says, we should also tell what's not happening. Better than not tell anything at all. Yep, and Talish reminding us that it's not going to grow by itself, but we need to nurture it. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's a conversation I was even having with some of our advisors recently about how we need, as a board, either directly from the board or maybe this is a new position that we have, we need someone that is always looking at how do we grow and nurture the association? What is our strategy, not just for addressing, everyone's really curious about what's happening with open source right now, but thinking about 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, what is going to drive people to want to be more involved in the association? So it's been a very busy year getting those 4 pillars set. But as that work kind of starts to spread down into the committees, I'm excited to see as a board how we can focus more on growing and nurturing the association.
Mm-hmm. Now we only have one question left in the Q&A, and that is the non-Magento question of how do I get Magento swag? Chris, I still have some Magento stickers, if I should mail them to you. And I might also still have an unused pair of Magento socks. But I'm not sure if you can get hold of any Magento swag these days without any in-person event. Maybe it's time to have all of us pack together packages of swag and send those, how do you call them in English? Like a mail chain or something. And everyone can pick something from the package and send it along to the next person.
There we go.
Oh, Talish brought in another question. What was the link for Commerce Coop on the website? It flashed too quickly by. Talish, if you refer to the general
I can put it
Coop.
in the chat there. It's magentoassociation.org/commerce-co-op. And Slava also got it. I didn't know you could reply to a Q&A. Nice, Slava. Thank you. I really thought y'all would have more questions. I know there were some great questions that were being asked of me in the chat in that last session that I missed. So if anyone remembers any of those or wants to pose those, I definitely don't mind answering them. I had to run downstairs to get myself some coffee so that I can handle all these questions, and I missed some of them. But
I'm not sure if I can grab hold of them. If you, dear audience, still remember your questions, please copy them here.
Now I have a question for y'all as we do that. How do you want to receive updates? One question that's come up recently is each of these blog articles I've been writing to update y'all is, do we send an email blast to the entire membership with this article? And I write long articles, as y'all probably seen and realized. So I've been saying, no, let's not send everyone every single thing I write via email, because I worry we're going to just start to overwhelm everybody. But would you like to see them all via email? Would you like to see them on Twitter, on Slack, video? Like, how would y'all like to get that communication from us. And if you have any preferences, drop them in the chat there. I'm already seeing Brent saying email blast and blog. Vinay is saying more frequent blog posts. Willem is saying an email blast that does not contain only advertisements would be very welcome. Yeah, I'm gonna be working on that for sure. Brief summary email with a link to the full blog post. Yeah, I'm thinking that would be good. So yeah.
Yeah, I think blog post has the big advantage that it's also accessible to those who are not members yet and who haven't even signed up to the newsletter yet. So they can actually see what we're up to before they sign up for membership, for example. And Robert would also like to see them on the Slack channel. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay. Josh, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't think I do. I guess I'll close with, assuming we don't get any last minute questions, I'll close with, if you either live or you're watching this recording and you're wondering, what's going on with the association, or I've heard that, for instance, the association's license agreement for the trademark can get revoked at any time. Feel free to reach out to me or to reach out to the association. I accidentally and then intentionally quit Twitter for the past year. And so it wasn't until some things got escalated that I even noticed some of the questions that were out there. So I am going to re-engage a little bit, but also work with our staff to try to mine Twitter a little bit more for those questions. But I definitely, especially as I'm writing these blog articles every week, I want to write about the questions that y'all have, the topics that y'all are trying to figure out what's going on with the association. So definitely, please just ask me, reach out to me. You can always email us at info@magentoassociation.org as well. So, and Eric said, what is the best way to reach out to the association? I would say that info at email is a good way. That goes to Jacqueline, and between me and Sonia, I think Jacqueline spends all of our time with one of us, and she can pass along the question to us. Our Twitter account, it's our social media team that monitors that, and they do a great job, but I think the info at email probably gets to people that can answer your questions a little bit more quickly. And Telesh said, wait, who is Jacqueline? That's a good point. So Jacqueline is a staff member at Smith Buckland. She is a little bit of everything. I think technically she kind of started as a project manager type to help us with a lot of things, but she coordinates everything. So she coordinates the schedule of the board meetings. She coordinates the committees, bringing information between the committees or between the committees and the board, things like that. So that is the Jacqueline I was mentioning that monitors the info at Magento Association email. And Vinay said he added a late question.
Mm-hmm. Is there a plan to publish all MA committees and task force on the website so members can see what is going on? So as far as I know, we, since about a week ago, have the committees on our website. And I'm not sure, no, the task force seems not to be on that. But if you check out this website and scroll down, you should be able to see at least the names of our committees. And one thing that I might actually like to see added there as well is a way to contact each committee. Because we don't really, I think it's okay if you know people on these committees and reach out to them, but I think it would be better to have a direct contact for the whole committee to reach out to. As I saw earlier today, people reaching out to me asking how they can get involved, for example, with content and podcasts. And I would say to this person and that person, but it would be a lot better if you could just say, please email, for example, content@magentoassociation.org.
For now, you could email info@magentoassociation.org and just in the subject line say message for the events committee, but I do think we could make that easier. So
that's true. We kind of work in technology stuff, right? So and in this web. Okay. People, put in your questions. Otherwise, I would wrap this up because we still want to hang out with you and chit chat. And yeah, I'm just reading Teller's comment here. Yeah, it's easy to reach out people in charge. Yes, so that actually means we need to have some kind of, maybe the chair of a committee or something publicly, including their contact info.
Yeah. And one thing I have not told the committee chairs yet, so surprise everyone, but as part of this series of blog articles, I want to see each committee have a blog article published about what they're doing, what sort of feedback they need, what they're planning on doing, any additional volunteers they need. And I think as part of that, we could even say, and if you have a question for the committee, here's the best way to raise it. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a question. Final decision. Let's vote. Oh, Moses wants us to leave this website. Oh, yeah. So Talish is obviously already selected as the Chief Hype Officer. I'm not sure if that's an inclusive process. Yeah, okay, but with that, maybe that's the good tone to end this Q&A and to officially wrap up the ML Connect. I really enjoyed it today, and I think that what I hope to accomplish with this day and this event and our whole task force wanted to see is that people actually have some direct contact again and discuss. And as you can see with the emotions referred to, it's we care. Sometimes we might be a bit overworked and can't get as much done as we hope to, but I thought today was really a good day to recharge some of our batteries around how we feel about this community. And I hope to see the spirit and this level of happiness, this happiness in the after show or hangout, however you want to call this, as an online event. And as Marta has already mentioned in the chat, if you move over to sessions, you can choose your room, make sure to grab a drink on your way there. And I hope to see you all there, chat some more. And yeah, it was really nice to see you all today and speak with you. And I thank everyone who made this possible. I thank you for your questions, dear audience, and all your engagement in the chat. And Josh, I thank you for all your honest answers. And even if some of them aren't yet officially noted by the board. Yeah. All right.
All right. I'll see y'all in the after party sessions then.
Yep. See you all in sessions.